All right, welcome back to Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars. I, of course, am your gracious host, Richie Mars, and I am here with two fabulous guests. One has been a guest already. You know him here as Scotty Sequel, but in the outside world from this realm, he co-hosts a podcast called Shoot the Flick with his lovely wife, Frankie, and she is also here today. So, guys, thank you for being on the show.
Yay!
Yes, thank you for having us. This is a little different from what we usually do on this show.
Yeah, absolutely. I always wanted to get Frankie on board for one episode, at least one episode, because Frankie is not a wrestling fan.
Yeah,
But
not for like a very, very, very long time. And I was like, I want to be on Richie's show, but I don't know what the hell I'm talking about. But now I kind of do a little
so
bit.
I figured I figured we have like a happy medium,
Yes.
pretty much. So we're gonna talk about a wrestler and their movie career.
Ooh.
Ah.
And we're not talking about The Rock because what we would be
All his
doing.
movies are the same.
What,
Don't worry, I said it for you, Richie.
I was sent the meme of The Rock is in like a jungle and he's wearing a gray shirt, and the meme is these are four separate movies.
Literally, like, yeah.
The fact is, I could probably tell you in that meme if I look at it which each movie is.
Oh, they list them off too, and it's great. It's like
I'm
Rampage.
sure, yeah.
It's like Jumanji 1 and 2,
Right. And then there's
and I think
like,
it's Race to Witch Mountain.
yeah, and then there's Jungle Cruise. Jungle's even in the name on that one.
Indeed. I
But
think
enough.
again I've seen.
You've seen pretty much all of The Rock's movies, which is astounding.
Yeah.
In not the best way, but
I think the only one I'm still missing is is San Andreas is the only one I haven't seen.
Scott, that's the best one. I wouldn't. I'm kidding.
Jiminy Christmas. But we're not talking about The Rock today. We are talking another wrestler turned actor into the great lands of Hollywood. We're talking about Dave Bautista.
Ah, yes.
Indeed. Drax himself.
Yes, and let's talk about that. Did you guys know of Bautista before the Guardians of the Galaxy cast was announced? I know you, Scott, obviously knew because you were in touch with wrestling. But what about you, Frankie?
Frankly,
Frankly, my dear.
I knew he was a wrestler. I'd never seen him wrestle or anything like that. I didn't know his backstory in the WWE or anything, but I knew he was a wrestler. So I wasn't expecting much. But to be fair, I feel like no one was expecting much from the Guardians of the Galaxy in general.
Yeah, I agree, because Guardians was a weird choice of a Marvel movie to adapt because not many people knew of it. All the characters were very niche in the comics. And even as an actor, Batista wasn't really. He didn't have that breakout role yet. So the anticipation for Batista in a superhero role and performing well, he had a lot of odds stacked against him.
Well, you gotta look at. Yes, Guardians is very niche. Marvel, I think, especially when Guardians came out, they didn't have a lot of faith behind it, so they let James Gunn do whatever he kind of wanted with it.
Thank God, though.
Thank God, because they let him control this basically. Because they're like, "Oh, you have a movie about a talking raccoon? Cast whoever the hell you want. We don't care."
And it's so interesting, at least the cast of Guardians of the Galaxy, because you have leading men like Vin Diesel and Bradley Cooper as CGI characters, when in normal superhero movies, they would be at the forefront, like in person. They wouldn't be voicing these larger than life characters. They would just be in the middle, and somebody like Batista, who hadn't had much acting experience, would probably be on the other side of the foot, or be like bodyguard number 2 or whatever, space henchman number 3.
Yeah, I mean, I'll tell you this, in watching all of the Batista movies that we did, and we didn't even watch them all because there are quite a few, but we watched a decent amount. And in like, I want to say at least 75% of them, he just plays the heavy. Like, he's just like guy that beats up main character. Like, that's his role in the movie.
Yeah, and believe it or not, he actually slimmed down from his traditional wrestling physique, like his first run with WWE. He had to slim down in order to be cast as these roles, to be heavy. Like same thing that John Cena is doing right now. To be cast in more roles, you gotta kind of fit what the directors are looking for. And if you're hulked out of your mind, bro, then it's not really going to translate that well onto the big screen.
Well, he does get his ass kicked quite frequently in a lot of these movies. Um, yeah, me and Frankie have been talking about this since we've scheduled this for a while, and I think because a lot of people are like, oh, Dave Bautista is going to be the first wrestler to win an Oscar. We've heard that for quite a while now, and he very well could be. But I think Dave Bautista's career, at least at this point, I think he's more closely related to an actor or actress like Gal Gadot. Now, I know this sounds weird, but hear me out. I think Dave Bautista can act decently, but he needs a good director to lead him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he can do it on his own. I don't think he can take a bad movie and make it good.
Okay.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the bad Batista movies that you think if there was a
Oh,
better
there's so many.
director, if there was
Holy
a better
shit.
director, would Batista actually turn it around? Like, what director and which film do you think would have made a Batista film better as a result?
Well,
Going through
one of the better ones that we watched was Heist.
Well, heist. Okay, here's the thing. I define movies maybe differently than you guys.
Oh god, here we go.
You know, when you see certain production companies pop up on the screen before the opening credits start, you know what production companies are involved in, like movies that generally star wrestlers and usually start off with drone shots of like a cityscape that they definitely didn't film. And and then there's, real movies like, Guardians and like he was in the one of those freaking James Bond movies, Spectre, which wasn't a great Bond movie, but he did good in it.
He said one line, so he better.
Yeah, I mean, he did what he came to do.
He was the heavy.
Apparently, he was dubbed in that scene.
Was he
too.
really? Oh
He
my
was dubbed because he couldn't do a British accent.
But I think in those earlier movies of his career where it's clearly a production company that's like, here's a wrestler that everybody likes, let's put him in a movie where he's either like a private investigator or a thug or
like
just
a
something
Schwarzenegger
badass.
like a Schwarzenegger kind of ripoff.
Right. Exactly.
Which segues into one feature, my first feature of watching Batista in. It's called The Wrong Side of Town.
Oh god, I watched that.
And it's a
Scott told me that you said don't watch it, and I was like, okay, I won't watch it.
Yeah, I wouldn't watch it. It's just so boring.
Well, the other issue is with that movie, it lies to you.
Yeah, it does, because the DVD cover shows Batista front and center with two Glocks in his hand, and then you have Jarul over the shoulder of one, Jarul, and then wrestling star Rob Van Dam, who's the star, over the other side of the shoulder.
Oh, okay.
And Batista's in the movie for about 5 minutes tops.
Oh, shit. That's so bad.
But yeah, he's front and center in the poster. I'm like, oh, and I'm sitting there watching the movie and watching Rob Van Dam be the lead. I'm like, where in the hell is Batista?
Batista does not show up until about an hour into the movie. And he's in about 4 scenes tops.
Also, for a movie starring 2 wrestlers, the action is terrible.
It's pretty slow and plotting. Like, there was a scene where Rob Van Dam gets shot in the shoulder, and it's legitimately padding 10 minutes of him escaping from the bad guys, walking into his house, and just pulling the bullet out.
Oh my
it's
God.
like you're there on that whole journey.
But they won't even let the wrestlers fight people. They do so many quick cuts that it looks so fake, and clearly you're not letting these guys do what they do best.
There
Like,
was a couple other ones like that with the quick cutting, and it was just like hurting my brain. But I do want to talk about Heist because Scott just mentioned that. Out of all the wrestler quote unquote movies that we watched, like that was my favorite one. But I think it had nothing to do with Batista at all. Because Batista in that one in particular, I think it came out in 2015, and it stars Rob De Niro and Jeffrey Dean Morgan, which is the only reason why that movie's watchable. Dave Bautista just plays a fucking crazy guy, and he does the job, but it's just like, I prefer him more when he plays like the strong, silent type, because sometimes that could be boring, but at least that isn't as obnoxious.
Do you think Batista has the charisma and the star power currently to be a main character and drive a movie, or do you think he needs to be partnered up with some other people?
That's a question.
I think he has potential, but I don't know. I don't think his charisma ever leaps off the screen. Like, he's
Yeah.
great as Drax. Drax is arguably his best character so far.
Well, that's A, because he's been playing it for 10 years, and B, because it's an ensemble. It's not really the Drax show.
But like, you watch him in, like, even when he was back in wrestling, and you watched him, like, he started out as the strong, silent bodyguard guy for like Evolution and even Devon Dudley. Oh, sorry,
Deacon
Reverend
Batista.
Devon. I apologize.
Deacon Batista. Yeah, Frankie, he played a deacon to a reverend. That was his debut character.
Who did?
Batista.
Batista?
He was a deacon. And there's a fun story about that. There is a fun story about
Alright.
that. So, WWE used to have a developmental system called OVW, Ohio Valley Wrestling, where it's pretty much like their feeder system, like the minor leagues to WWE. And Batista got notified that he was going to get called up and he needs to bring a suit. So he's like, all right. And he doesn't have any money at the time, because at the time they were only paying their guys about $500 a week on the minor leagues, which isn't very much to get by. So Batista comes to TV his first time. He's all smiles. He's all happy. He has a suit. And they're like, great, cut off the sleeves of the suit. And he's like, what? Yeah, cut off the sleeves of the suit. You're going to debut as Deacon Batista. And they hand him a metal collection box. And that was going to be his main weapon. So you have shaved head Batista. Imagine Drax without the makeup in a suit, just
Oh my
sleeves
God.
cut off, and just decking people with a metal collection box.
I mean, all right.
Y'all got to start
Okay.
somewhere.
You gotta start somewhere. God bless. I think, oh gosh, what was I gonna say? I forgot what I was gonna say.
But yeah, it was.
That's
one of
interesting.
those-
I prefer later version of Batista wrestling with the give me what I want.
That-
Give me what I want. And like him, the clip that Richie just sent me of him like grabbing some tiny wrestler man in a mask and
Rey Mysterio.
screaming in his face, "You were supposed to be my friend."
Let's
That's the thing. He's funny. He has the capability to be funny, and I feel like Drax really let people know, like, oh, he's got timing. Like he can be really funny, but you have to have a good script to be funny, and you also probably have to have a good actor to bounce off of. That's also funny. Like if we think about Stuber, which is probably like the most recent comedy, other than like Guardians, that he was a part of. I know Richie's gonna be mad. But like it wasn't that funny. I didn't laugh. I laughed more at the kid movie that he did, the Amazon Prime movie.
No, I agree with you. Stuber was just like one of those things that you put on in the background, and then maybe you'll get a chuckle here and there, but it's not like what I see is like, oh, that's a comedic movie that's going in the comedy pile with 21 Jump Street and Superbad and all those other movies that came out in the 2010s. But Batista always had this kind of silent charisma about him where he didn't really need to say much in wrestling when he was a good guy, at least. But when he flipped the script and he turned heel and he did the give me what I want or you're supposed to be my friend, and that's been memed to death, I do have to ask you two, because we've seen this with Batista and we've seen it with John Cena. Do you think memes of certain people are trajecting certain acting and movie careers? Because it seemed like with John Cena, when they had and his name is John Cena, that meme. It kind of parlayed him into more opportunities and more acting roles after that.
I think it helps them become more well known to a general audience. Because let's face it, wrestling isn't as big as it used to be. Like, it's still got a good following, but like back in the Attitude Era when everyone used to watch it, like if you missed a wrestling show, you were like exiled for a day. Um,
Yeah, it's like back then, wrestling was kind of controlling pop culture, and now wrestling is kind of following what pop culture is doing or what's popular at this time. Sometimes they're really late on it, sometimes they're a little bit ahead of the curve. You know, it's one of those things where you just don't know where the pendulum is shifting.
I would agree, but I would also say, okay, if you look at the main three being The Rock, Cena, and Batista, I think there's a reason a lot of people can see Batista kind of moving past everything and becoming like a more serious actor and potentially winning an Oscar someday. And you don't see the other two in that conversation. And I think that's because whether or not you like Batista as an actor or a wrestler, whatever, you got to acknowledge the fact that like he has range. Like he's done several different kinds of movies. Like he's done the, corny action thing. He's done the comedy thing. He's done the more serious thing. And Blade Runner 2049, I remember seeing that in theaters and being like kind of blown away even though he was only in one scene. It was kind of shocking to see Drax as I knew him then in such a serious kind of toned down role. And I feel like when you look at The Rock, I mean, like we just said, he's, action superstar guy who's always in the jungle in a tight t-shirt for some reason. And then with Cena, he's definitely gone more the comedy slash, kids movie route, but mostly comedy. And I feel like that works for both of them. But I feel like Batista might be able to break through because he's at least trying different things. He doesn't want to get stuck in one box.
I also, sorry, I also think when you look at Batista, he's willing to look different. Like, The Rock is ripped out of his mind. He's always been ripped out of his mind. He looks like no one else could look. Cena kind of just looks like a slimmer version of what he's always kind of looked like. Maybe his hair got a little poofier as the years have gone on.
There's a reason
But
for that.
but Batista has not only looked like the big giant scary monster in some movies, he's also looked like an old man. Like, he puts on
Yeah.
those glasses and kind of he bends in a way where he kind of looks older than I think he is. And I'm like, interesting. We can see something different here. And I don't think Cena or The Rock are willing to let themselves do that.
I think, and this is complete speculation, and I think where it comes with The Rock was he was trying to go that Batista route at first.
I
This is
agree, yeah.
this is like pre Fast Furious 5, and he was told to slim down. He was told you can't be bulky. And now The Rock, I think, is more focused on being his own brand than being his own movie star. And I read something and totally clicked with me where The Rock doesn't have a definitive character that he played, like a definitive franchise character. Maybe Luke Hobbs is like the closest that he'll get, but other actors in his genre, like Rocky, he had two, or Sylvester Stallone, he had Rocky and Rambo. Schwarzenegger, he had Conan and Terminator. With Batista, he has Drax currently, and I think The Rock is he could afford himself to be comfortable. And Batista has been on record saying that he wants to look and work with the best directors that, or the most prolific directors at this time. Because I know he did that zombie movie with Zack Snyder.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
He worked with the Russo brothers, obviously James Gunn, like we talked about. Uh, Taika Waititi for a little bit. So he's getting this accolades. He's gaining these accolades, and it's just looking more and more like an impressive resume, or an impressive resume to the moviegoer, as opposed to, hey, here's another wrestler doing an action comedy movie.
I absolutely agree with you. I think The Rock is maybe panicking a little bit that the shtick is getting stale. I think that's why he panicked so bad when Black Adam bombed. I think that's why he immediately was like, "Oh, we're gonna do a live action Moana. And I'm gonna play Maui." Like what? No, nobody wants that. Like I think he's starting to think about like more down the road as far as his acting career, like what's gonna happen. Because I think I saw an interview with Bautista saying like, yeah, I don't want to keep up like the friggin' like wrestling era like physique and Drax physique forever. Like I don't want to bank. I just want to do other things. And I feel like that's probably the better way to go to have longevity in your acting career. Just do different things.
Well, also comparing the two, The Rock also has a thing about like Hobbs is probably his character. Like that's probably the biggest character because he's played him multiple times.
That's why Vin Diesel probably hates him. Because he's like, you're trying to take my franchise, motherfucker.
Well, they hate each other for a lot of reasons in that movie. But even if you've watched the character of Hobbs from Fast 5 to Fast 6 to Hobbs and Shaw, he has molded into basically a different character from when he started. Fast 5.
Aren't they all different? Didn't they start off fucking like racing cars in like a parking lot somewhere, and now they're like going outer space and shit?
They were
and flying cars
now,
on the fucking
now,
highway.
Wait.
I've only seen the first Fast and Furious, so
Now-
I don't have the fucking wherewithal for that. But I'm just saying.
Now, the first Fast and Furious, they were stealing VHS,
Oh,
DVD
Christ.
combo machines.
Well, we can't do that forever. We certainly can't do that forever. Now they're stealing Blu-ray players. Even that's outdated now. Jesus Christ. They're stealing the internet.
Netflix, and we're gonna steal Netflix, and
we're gonna steal all the sharing
steal
passwords.
all of Netflix.
Yeah.
Oh Christ.
And Dom's gonna say family a bunch of times.
Yes.
Oh my God. It's all about family, Richie. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
But Bautista, I don't. The issue is Bautista seems to have really two. He has the calm, relaxed sense of like certain like moments where you watch like in movies like Bushwick, and then even like softer moments for Drax in 2049. He's got that soft sense of him, but then he has that crazy sense of him too, where Drax is losing his mind, or where you have Heist, where he's also a lunatic. And you brought up Zack Snyder and the zombie movie, which I can't.
Army of the
Army
Dead.
of the Dead. Thank you.
Army of the Dead. Okay.
And I know, I know Batista's trying to like branch out, but that movie got stolen by an actor who was replacing somebody. Like Batista was kind of just bland in that movie.
Oh yeah. Wait, that was
That was
Tig Notaro replaced somebody. Who was that?
I don't know.
Oh, the guy Chris Delia or whatever his name is, because he was a creep.
Yes, exactly.
So they replaced him. Yeah.
But like, that's my fear with Batista is even sometimes when he's not being funny, he can get a little bland.
Yeah, I can definitely see that in the movies I watched with Bautista. I saw a couple scenes from is it called Knives Out Glass Onion with him?
Yeah, that's the Knives Out sequel.
Yeah, he was in it, and he played like this super bro version.
Yeah, I thought like that was
like
a fun little thing for him.
Yeah, that was fun, but I was just like, man, I wish he could go a little bit more over the top with it. I think he only got more over the top when he was, spoiler alert, dying.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I mean, he can only do so much. He dies within like the first quarter of the movie.
Yeah, and I feel like directors are kind of comfortable with utilizing Bautista, but I don't think he's been given that full confidence from a director or somebody in a movie to actually be like, hey, you're this lead guy, try to carry this movie. I think the first time we've seen that, at least recently, was with Knock at the Cabin. And of course, that was directed by our old good friend Shyamalan.
Oh my god, he's no friend of mine. He is no friend of mine.
I will say I haven't seen the movie, so I can't judge it completely.
I haven't
yet,
seen it yet either.
But I watched Bautista's scenes before we got on here, and I have to say he does a very good job.
Yeah, that's what like the general consensus is, no matter how you feel about the movie. I've heard like mixed things about the movie itself, but his performance is supposed to be very good. But give it to him, he's really standing by what he said as far as like he's trying to gravitate towards the bigger name directors and he wants to work with like the best people. And I mean, whether you think Shyamalan's the best or not, he's a big name, you know, and he was in the Dune Part 1 movie with Villeneuve, and he was only in that for a little bit because I think he's a villain in that, but he's going to be in Part 2 even more. So I'm actually really looking forward to that. But
and he was also in Riddick,
trying to get
too.
his name and face in there, huh?
He was also in Riddick with Vin Diesel, since we were talking about Vin Diesel.
Okay. Can we talk about Riddick for just 1 second? Just 1 second.
I actually don't know much about Riddick, so I'm very.
I don't either, but here's the tea. Scott knows about it, right?
I do.
And I made a list because I'm very much, if you know anything about Shoot the Flick, if you've listened to our podcast, it's super fun. It's all about movies, obviously, because that's what we're talking about here. And I trusted my husband, you see. I trusted my husband, you see. I said, okay, well, I don't want to watch Riddick because it's like a sequel. I'll watch the first 2 movies first. And he's like, oh, you'll like the first one. And I was like, okay. And then I watched it and I was like, I hated that. It was terrible. I'm not watching anymore. So I didn't watch Riddick, unfortunately, because I watched Pitch Black, which is the first movie, and hated it and gave up. I was like, nope, not doing that again. So that's all Scott's fault. But Scott, if you'd like to discuss Riddick, feel free.
Riddick's not a strong sequel in any sense. It's another movie where Vin Diesel, like, it's kind of gone downhill as the movies have gone on.
Vin Diesel gives off such wrestler energy, even though I know he's not a wrestler. Does that make sense?
Now explain wrestler energy for people who are not
like a guy who is big and buff and acts real tough and maybe relies too much, at least earlier in their career, on the I'm strong and tough, so that's how I'm an actor now in a movie. I just act strong and tough and say lines with a modicum of emotion, maybe 1% feeling, and now I'm an actor.
Well, if you're gonna go on Vin Diesel, technically he has a movie early in his career where he plays a mafia guy in a fat suit.
Vin Diesel?
Yeah, like it's like his second or third movie, and he's actually gives like a really good acting performance in the thing. But then like he got into movies like Knockaround Guys and all these other movies where he got to play like the tough guy.
I don't think I've ever seen him emote in a movie, Vin Diesel. I'm trying to think. I'm being serious. I'm really trying.
I think once he got into the first Fast and the Furious.
Even then, all he does is say family all the time.
No, but like
family. It's all about family.
Well, that's happened later. It was the first one and Pitch Black. Were like, oh, he grabbed those 2 characters and that's all he did afterwards, basically, and then Groot.
Tying it back to Guardians of the Galaxy.
Oh God, did you watch the third one?
No, I've been spoiled on what happens though.
Oh, okay, that sucks. That's what happened to us for No Way Home, because it was during COVID and we couldn't really watch it. And we go to the theaters, so we I got spoiled. Scott didn't somehow, but I did.
I avoided everything.
But anyway, so yeah, fun fact, I guess, since we're on the subject of Vin Diesel now for some reason, when we were in the theater watching Guardians 3, and Groot out of nowhere goes, "I love you guys," I emitted a loud yell of "what the fuck" in the middle of the theater, and I was like, what the fuck was that? And then it was explained to me afterwards by the internet, like, oh, we can understand him now as the audience because we've been with them for so long. And then I proceeded to cry again because I cried a lot during that movie. Even Drax was good in that movie. He like emitted real emotions there. Like he cried saying goodbye to Mantis, and I was like, "Oh, I feel things." That's the thing. I don't think ever in my life have I seen a Rock movie or a Cena movie that's ever made me cry a single tear. And you know what? I'll give him that.
Do you think Drax's arc and how Batista portrayed Drax was a satisfying beginning, middle, and end for the character?
Yes. If you look at it, the first movie, he's seeking vengeance for the death of his family.
Yes.
Kind of it falls in with this cast of misfits. Is still kind of looking for whatever he's looking for, even with them. Like, he'll protect them and they're his friends, but then at the end, he kind of like basically becomes a father with
all these little children at the end of the third
and
movie.
he has a family now again, something that I assumed when his original family died, he never thought would happen again. So yeah, I feel like it was a nice little build through him, not being just the goofy guy who can't understand sarcasm.
It is nice that they had comedy and drama kind of balanced for that character, because I feel like it would have been so easy to just make Drax constantly a source of comedy. But I feel like with all the characters in the Guardians, they did a good job at balancing both.
I think James Gunn understood that cast super well.
Yeah, James Gunn just has a knack for
I think
that in
and
general.
that's why I think for Batista, he needs that guiding hand. He needs somebody who understands what he can do and is willing to help mold him in that direction. Like, Zack Snyder got him for one movie. He's fine in the movie. He's not the worst part of that movie. That's a whole nother story. M. Night Shyamalan, I think he was still willing to try things, and I think it kind of worked well with Batista in Knock at the Cabin. So he just needs to find those directors who are willing to let him do his thing, but mold him in a direction that benefits the movie.
Yeah, it's all about picking. That's really what it is. You have to have a good picker when you're an actor, just in general, I think. I feel like Batista's working on that and doing better with that. Because you even if you're a really funny guy, everyone's got a shit movie, right? Everyone's got a stinker out there, and it's just for whatever reason, either the script or the director or whatever, it just didn't work out. So you have to, once you're in the business, I feel like for a while you kind of get a gauge of what's good and what's bad and what you can handle as an actor and what you can't. So then you just develop your ability to be a good picker.
Well, I even think for wrestlers, it's even harder because they know if they don't pick good movies, they get relegated to crap if they want to keep their movie career going.
Well, and also you probably get stigmatized and kind of put in a box like, oh, look, it's Dave Bautista. We have this gangster role for you if you'd like that. Something like that.
Well, another
I'm sure
perfect
him and all the other ones too are put in that box all the time.
Yeah, well, another perfect example, Stone Cold Steve Austin, when he broke into movies a little bit too late because the buzz around his name kind of faded when he retired from neck injuries. And because of that, his movie career was, his wrestling gimmick, his character. Because you had The Condemned, you had The Expendables, you had, I think he was like in a straight to DVD film
He's in
called
a couple
Uncaged.
of those, yeah.
Yeah, and it's like basically the same brute character where they just wanted him, the character from WWE. I don't think they had any interest in exploring what other opportunities they could have had with him, in different genres like comedy, like horror, for example. And I feel like with Batista, he's the first wrestler turned actor that's really took a big enough risk and was able to take a big enough risk due to the success of Guardians to be in these lesser known movies?
I think he's had the greatest diversity in his career so far. I think when you look at the actors who have sprung to success in their acting, when you look at the wrestlers who have sprung to any kind of success in their acting careers, you go back to Andre, and like, if it wasn't for the fact that his body was betraying him, I wonder what he could have done, even though he was a monster of a man. You look at Hogan with some of his choices. I think if he didn't, if he let himself be a little more of a goofball, he could have been interesting. Because I think once he hit Rocky 3, where you were like, this guy could go anywhere from this point. You got Piper. He makes some bad choices, like Hell Comes to Frogtown.
And Wrestlers
Yeah,
versus
but that one,
Zombies.
I mean, he's got fucking
But he's got
They
They
Live.
Live. But
They Live, yeah.
But then he's got like nothing else that's really of note.
And
True.
let's talk about the different contracts that I know some wrestlers have during their movies. Like I know The Rock, I'm not sure if it was leaked, but I read like in a couple articles that his contract specifically states that he can't lose a fight, I believe, and he can only get hit a certain number of times in these movies.
Oh, interesting.
It wouldn't surprise me because
Oh, hold on. Dog is coughing. All good?
it wouldn't surprise me because he does have an ego, and I think when you look at the guys he's clearly in competition with, which are like 80s Stallone and 80s Arnold. That's his competition, really.
That's not even fair, though.
It's not, but that's his contemporaries. That's who he is. Like, that's what the level The Rock is on right now. And those are the people, if you're going to compare actors, it's those three. And it might be unfair to The Rock because you're asking to go against two legends of the action star genre, you know?
Mhm.
But, like, it's one of those things, like, yeah, he doesn't want to lose because those guys didn't lose.
Rocky lost.
Rocky lost, but Rocky was also the beginning of Stallone's career. After Rocky lost, did Rocky ever really lose again? No.
What do you mean?
He lost in Balboa. He didn't really lose again, really.
Yeah, you can't argue that with me now. Now I've seen 3 of the movies. Like, what do you say?
But-
And also, like Richie said before, it's like, okay, Stallone has Rocky and Rambo, and fucking Schwarzenegger has Terminator. The Rock doesn't have that. And he, like, at the rate he's going, he won't, because people are already getting sick of his shit. I don't, you know what I mean? Like, The Rock, okay, I do agree with you that that's the closest comparison to Stallone and Schwarzenegger, because they also did like bullshit like kiddie movies, and so does The Rock, and they also did the action movies like The Rock. But it's just, he doesn't have in every movie, The Rock is The Rock. Like, name a character in a movie starring The Rock except for, like, you know, Moana, because it's a Disney movie. Everybody knows it's Maui. Other than that, name a character name, and Hobbs, because Fast and Furious.
I will say 2 of my favorite Rock characters in the movies was when he played Bob Stone in Central Intelligence,
Yes.
and that guy
You're
in
taking
Pain
too
and
long.
Gain.
No kidding.
No, that guy in Pain and Gain. I thought he did very well in Pain and Gain.
But the guy's name wasn't that guy. It's not that guy Johnson. That's not his name.
It was Paul something.
So that's like what I'm saying. Like,
no, I agree.
he's The Rock. I liked The Rock in that movie. I liked The Rock in this movie. But you know, like, characters' names from Stallone movies and Schwarzenegger movies.
Well, you know the big ones, yeah. It
Okay,
comes down to
I would say The Jungle Cruise, or, like, you know, freaking Jumanji was like one of the biggest movies of the past couple years. What's his character name in Jumanji? Don't worry, I'll wait.
I think it's actually
Stop! You don't know his fucking name.
I actually believe I do. I think it's
Gravestone.
Thank you.
God damn it, Richie, you're ruining my argument.
I'm sorry, but like the normal person who doesn't have like a wealth of like useless information like myself won't know that.
Wouldn't know that probably, yeah.
So I do agree with that. But a funny thing about the Army of the Dead movie is it? So WWE did a tie-in. This had nothing to do with Batista, but there was a lumberjack match, and that's a match where there are people on the outside, and if you get thrown onto the outside, they'll just like throw you back in. So basically, it's like a people like making a fence so you don't escape the ring and try to run away. So to tie into this movie, The Miz, who's been in many straight to DVD movies, The Marine 3, 4, 5, 6, and Santa's Little Helper, just to name a few, faced off against Damian Priest, and the Lumberjacks weren't wrestlers; they were zombies from the movie that are just pretty much their minor league recruits dressed as zombies. And not only did The Miz tear his ACL during that match, Batista goes on Twitter because fans were rebelling against this. Batista goes on Twitter. He's like, "Whoa, that was not my idea. That was pretty stupid." I agree with you.
I was gonna say, okay, so first of all, The Miz is hilarious to me because I remember him when he was on like Real World Road Rules shit, and he was a clown then, but like a funny clown, but a clown. And so that's funny. But also, they did a whole promotion for this Army of the Dead movie, and they didn't think, oh, we should have the guy that used to work for us who's in the movie maybe be a part of the promotion. Perhaps that would make us money, no?
Yeah, this was during the time where it was like the pandemic era of
Shit.
wrestling.
Okay, well, that makes sense then, I guess.
So the arena was just full of like people, like screens watching at home, So that was the number one reason why, because Batista was going to get inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame in 2020. But since the pandemic happened, he pushed back due to scheduling conflicts, and he wanted his induction to be in front of actual people. So as of now, he hasn't been in the Hall of Fame inducted yet, but who knows when the schedules will line up and he'll be inducted into Hall of Fame, which is the road to his Oscar journey at large.
Yes, that will be and when after he wins his Oscar, it won't be like for his next trailer, Oscar winner Dave Bautista. It'll be WWE Hall of Famer Dave Bautista.
And it's so surreal because with the movies having, like you said, the big three, The Rock, Cena, and Batista, on SmackDown yesterday, they congratulated Cena for having the number 1 movie in the world, which is Fast 10. And they congratulate Batista, who had the number 2 movie in the world, which is Guardians 3.
Ooh.
So it's really weird how this stigma of wrestlers and movies kind of shifted over a period of time. When did you guys like see that shift happen? And was it natural when that shift happened?
I think the stigma, as much as we've been ragging on The Rock, I think The Rock opened a lot of doors for a lot of people.
Yeah.
I don't think if The Rock doesn't have success with movies like Scorpion King.
That's the one you're gonna hang your hat on? Scorpion King?
Mummy Returns, Scorpion King, Walking Tall, oh god, the movie with Sean William Scott.
As soon as you said Sean William Scott, you lost me.
It's
talk about like
The Rundown,
maybe a bigger movie, perhaps.
No, but these were the starts, and then he had his little Disney phase where he signed a contract with Disney and did 3 Disney movies. It's like as much as this kind of opened the door for people to kind of come in and do different things. Like then you started seeing people try other things, like Triple H tried to be in Blade 3, which is a disaster, but we won't go there.
Oh god.
Like, so it took a while to get to like Cena to get out of his prime of his wrestling career, Batista to get out of the prime of his wrestling career to go like try different things because they knew, hey, wrestling's not going to last forever. Eventually my body's going to break down on me. So they were willing to go try other things and be charismatic. But yeah, The Rock probably started changing that dynamic earlier on.
And let me just tell you the story on the moment that Batista wanted to shift from wrestling to acting. So this happened in the year 2008, and it was a cage match on Monday Night Raw with Batista defending the World Heavyweight Championship against Chris Jericho. And the finish was Chris Jericho was going to grab a piece of metal off the cage, hit Batista in the head, bing bada boom, Jericho climbs out of the cage, wins the match. Batista goes up to Chris Jericho, and he said, it's kind of weird that this match isn't going to have any blood in it. Because WWE was banning blood, and they were going to go to that full PG product since the Benoit tragedies happened. And Jericho just goes like, look, Dave, you know Vince's deal on blood? And I'm just going to leave it there. So Jericho walks off. And as Jericho is walking to the back, match goes on. Batista did the little color job, gig job. So he's bleeding. And Vince McMahon is so angry. He's not in the backstage position. And the agent of the match, who helps produce the match together, Dean Malenko, saying, Vince yelled so loudly. And he's saying, we're going to lose sponsors because of this. How could you let that happen? And I didn't know it was going to happen. Batista kind of did it without anybody's knowledge. So the next week on Raw, Vince gathers Batista, Jericho, the agent, the referee together, and he was showing them different angles of Batista cutting himself. And the best part is Batista didn't deny that he didn't do this. They just wanted to show proof from multiple different angles. Like there was an angle from on top of like the last row in the building, all these different cameras. And Jericho's like, man, where are those cameras when it's like I'm picking my nose in the stands or anything like that? Is kind of like a joke. And Vince McMahon goes to Batista saying, I'm going to have to fine you. And guess how much the fine was?
Oh, God. I'm going to be annoyed. What was it?
$100K.
That's correct. It was $100,000.
Fuck you, dude.
And
what the
he was
fuck?
And he was going to find the other participants who had no idea this was going on.
Okay, that's bullshit. He did it himself. What do you mean?
He fined the other ones $5,000.
Oh, fuck. Okay. What the fuck?
After this all happened, Batista said he's going to pay everybody's fines. He's not going to hear another word about it.
Okay, well, that's nice.
And then Vince is like, I'm not going to talk about this incident again. Like, you guys, screw off or whatever, you know? But Batista said that was the day where he found out, yeah, wrestling's kind of changing to a different position. Because at the time, there was always like a 1A, 1B kind of with John Cena and Batista. And Batista felt like Cena was gaining more opportunities as the face of the company, which kind of makes sense because Cena was younger than Batista, or is younger than Batista, and you want to keep that longevity around, and you don't know how long Batista has left. And Batista ultimately left to pursue movie opportunities.
It's a very interesting story. Yeah, I don't blame him at all. Because that makes sense. Like if you're getting hit in the head with a metal bar and you're like, there's not going to be any blood. Like everybody knows wrestling is fake, but like, let's at least have something good to show. And then he gets fined $100,000 for that. That's kind of fucking insane.
Well, at the time, I believe WWE signed with Mattel. So I think that they were afraid. Toys. Yeah, they were afraid of like sponsors being angry at them.
Yeah.
Canceling the deal. So I think that was the main reason. But Batista,
that makes sense, I guess, too.
Batista is an old school guy.
Yeah.
So
that's fair, though.
I think it's like indicative. And you see a lot of people in different injuries like this where it's like, oh, they don't do the same thing that they used to do kind of thing, where it's like it's a changing of the guard and either move forward or you stay behind. And Batista said, I'm going to try this other avenue for these opportunities that I wasn't accustomed to. Like he did like an appearance on Smallville, to my recollection. But that was the only...
Scott, you're a resident Smallville expert here.
Oh, God, I don't even remember that.
Like,
probably in the latest seasons.
like Rags and Chains or something like
Oh,
that.
yes, he did. Okay, now I do remember that. Yes.
Interesting.
This is when Batista had hair.
Yeah.
Scott, I did want to mention to you because one of the movies that we watched of Batista's that we were probably the most surprised about was My Spy, which was really the only like really kiddie movie that we saw. It was like on Amazon Prime, and we had pretty low expectations because like kids movie and like corny and blah blah blah. But it was actually like, really cute and really funny. I I just went on IMDb to look up like any upcoming movies that he has. Apparently, My Spy's getting a sequel, and I
Damn it.
couldn't be more excited. I actually am genuinely excited.
I did hear he was filming My Spy 2.
I'm like,
And the-
I never thought I'd say this, but I'm actually genuinely excited about that. Because the thing, like that movie, it's basically like every Schwarzenegger, Stallone,
Kindergarten
kids
Cop.
movie that it's Kindergarten Cop slash like any movie that stars an action star with a little kid. It's just that, but they say fuck a few times, so it's it's okay. I don't know. It was just like better than I thought it was gonna be, and it was like ironically funny.
Also, they tried to steal from other movies, which was hysterical.
Yeah, absolutely. They would like it was almost like the movie. They would joke about it and be like meta about the fact that they were stealing ideas from other things. And they would joke about that, and I'd be like, well, just because you joke about it doesn't mean you aren't still a thief, but like you're very brazen about it and I respect it. So I'm actually really excited that's getting a sequel.
Was that the hidden surprise for you out of all Batista's movie catalog that you enjoyed?
I'll say so, because even though we liked Heist, like we said before, I didn't really care for Batista's performance in that. At least with My Spy, like he plays kind of the strong silent type in that, but he actually also has some comedic good timing in there too, and it worked out. He did really good in that.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest.
Low expectations
Yeah.
breed good results.
Yeah, that's probably the biggest surprise. Another just like Heist was fun. I enjoyed his performance a little more in Heist, but like I think he balanced well off of Jeffrey D. Morgan's Calm. But like there's a lot of bad here. There is a lot of bad, especially early on when he's still when he's with clearly directors who are doing like their first or second movie, and they're like, oh, this isn't great here. He's got a new movie coming out that's being directed by Brittany Snow, who
Oh,
he
God.
met when he did the movie Bushwick, which is kind of The Purge meets
Red Dawn, you said.
meets Red Dawn. And
I didn't watch that. I was like, he was like, it's Bautista and Brittany Snow. I'm like, I'm okay. I'm alright.
and that was fine. It's kind of forgettable. But it's gonna be interesting because I'm like, okay, so clearly they made a relationship because Brittany Snow's willing to let him be the star of her first directorial debut.
Well, when we looked at the cast for that movie, he's the only star in her directorial debut. So, she might have just been like, please be in my movie. Pretty please. Oh, but babe, we missed Kickboxer Vengeance, the
Oh,
best of
God.
them all. I wanted to kill myself.
Okay. Well, now what does he do in Kickboxer Vengeance?
Well, it's all that choppy choreography we were talking about.
Like the zoomed in, like cut
Yeah, oh my
frames,
god, it was terrible. And then Batista, he did fine. He was just a heavy, like he was fighting the main guy, but the main guy was terrible. He sounded like he was trying to like do a Chris Evans impression. Like his voice sounded like Chris Evans, but then you look at him, you're like, oh, you're not Chris Evans at all. And then Batista, they gave Batista these obvious like hair plugs that just looked just terrible. Like, why would you do him like that, movie? Why would you do that?
I think I remember Batista's first, I guess, major quote unquote Hollywood movie was the like he was like this big brass guy.
The Man with the Iron Fists.
Yeah, that was like the big one that he was in 2012, and then Guardians came out a couple years later, and apparently Guardians was his last shot before I think he filed for bankruptcy. Like everything was like from wrestling, he kind of like almost lost or was about to lose, and then Guardians hit, and then he just kind of catapulted his career to newer heights.
Hey, good for him, man. Again, like it is in Hollywood, all you really need is one really good role. All you need is one really good role, and that will project you forward. Um, it's going to be interesting seeing where he goes and how he grows as an actor and what changes. He might not change that much. Who knows? He might just kind of vary from calm, relaxed guy to psychopath.
But I think, Scott, you are right in saying, like, if he got in with a good script and a good director, he could potentially be guided and have like a really good performance pulled out of him. And like, yeah, I would say if any of those big three, Leia, if any of those big three could pull out an Oscar nomination, not necessarily a win, let's not get crazy, but if any one of them could be in the Oscar conversation, I would say it's Batista. I got faith in Batista. I also feel like they all have ego, obviously, because wrestlers and actors, all of them have fucking ego. But he seems like the most level-headed of the three. That might all just be like bullshit, but just based on like interviews and like stuff like that, he just seems like the more level-headed of those top three.
Now, here's a question for both of you. Since we've talked about directors and stuff, and who do you think would be a good director you would want to see Batista work with? Because I have an answer.
What's your answer?
I would love to see him be in a Quentin movie.
Oh, that'd be fucking sick. Oh, he's only got one left.
But
supposedly, allegedly, Quentin's only got one left in the tank.
But like an ensemble movie with Tarantino, I feel like Batista would thrive in that.
That would be dope, yeah.
I'm not sure if I have a director in mind, but I do have a genre.
Okay, let's hear it.
Seen him in a romantic comedy.
Aw, you know what? I was thinking that too. Like when he did Stuber, I was like, this could, like, I could see him doing a rom-com and being like cute because he's got that charisma, and if you have the right partner in there with him in a romantic setting, I feel like he could do good.
I think romantic comedy would definitely be interesting. Of course, we've seen him do action. We've seen him do, I guess you can technically count Knock at the Cabin as kind of horror now.
Apparently, the ending of the movie and the book are way different.
You could put him in like a fucking Scorsese movie because he does all like crime stuff, and you know, he could be a heavy potentially in that, but he could also be a heavy with some substance. You know what I mean? So he could go outside the box, but still have some security in being like a tough guy.
That's true.
That would be interesting.
All right. One of these last questions for you. What is the best Batista movie and what is the worst Batista movie? And I'm not counting the Guardians trilogy as one thing. It's either volume 1, 2, or 3.
Oh, psh.
Okay. I think if you're going to go his best movie, I'm talking about just Batista's best movie.
Like his best performance.
His best performance.
Okay.
I think that's where we have to go here because I think Guardians clearly outweighs everything else.
I mean, yeah.
But if I had to say his best performance, It might be Guardians 3, actually. Um, and I feel like he doesn't like it's that's not his story, but like he has probably the best thing in that movie for him. Um, mm, yeah, that's probably his best movie. Though I am tempted also to say 2099.
I was gonna say because he was really good in his scene
He
in
was
Blade
really
Runner.
good. Leia, calm down, crazy. God, every 5 seconds. Um. Okay, so I'll say Guardians 1 is probably his best because I feel like he introduced the character and he led with the funny, which was I feel like what people were most surprised of when that movie came out, that he had so much of the funny inside of him to release. But then he also hit us with a little bit of the drama of the dead family, and it was like, oh, so sad, but also you're hilarious. So I liked that. And then I'll say worst. Oh god, there's a little bit to choose from. I haven't seen Army of the Dead.
It's fine. It's
I
forgettable.
haven't seen Bushwick because I refuse, like I
Also
said.
forgettable.
Riddick again refused, as I said.
Also whatever.
I'll say the first one we watched in this whole endeavor of going through as many Batista movies as we could before we wanted to throw ourselves off the roof. Mostly me. No, I'm kidding. It was okay. Some of them were good. But the first one we watched was 2011 House of the Rising Sun, and I hated that. It was terrible. He was terrible in it. Everyone in it was bad. I was bored, and the story was terribly convoluted. It was like, oh, I work for this guy, and I'm being set up for stealing all this money, and I used to be a cop, and my old partner's in on it, but I also am dating a hooker, and it's all very confusing, and I don't care about any of it. But to be fair, that was like one of his first probably movies, so I can't hold it that much against him.
Wrong Side of the Town is the worst movie of his entire list,
Oh,
followed by House of the
absolutely.
Rising Sun.
Yeah, Wrong Side of Town just was the wrong side of me was showing during that movie as I was watching it.
That movie is so rough to get through, and I can see why Rob Van Dam never had a movie career after that.
Unlike his brother Jean Claude.
Jean Claude.
Oh my god, he was in that kickboxer movie.
He was in that kickboxer movie.
That was just so weird. That movie, so weird.
Well, because he started in the original kickboxer.
No, I know, but it's God. I don't care. It's so bad. Anyway, but that wasn't Batista's fault at all.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah, both those movies are terrible.
And one last question with Batista, where do you see his future in Hollywood becoming? Do you see him becoming a producer or director, or do you think he stays the course as an actor for now?
Ooh, I don't know.
I think he's gonna stay the course as an actor. I don't know if he's creative enough to go the route of like actually creating like a full length like movies or being behind the scenes stuff. I don't think he's ever shown that acumen in like even when he crafted his character as a wrestler. I don't think it was like his character wasn't really like, oh, this is a deep crazy character. Like
Right, like a lot of depth or whatever.
I don't think he's shown that. I think his wheelhouse is what he's doing now.
Yeah, I'll say that's probably true. I feel like, I mean, I don't know a lot really at all about his wrestling career. I just know like from little clips here and there, memeable things that are like hilarious and cool. But I'll say like sometimes with actors, if they're in that world for a while, they kind of develop their own style and they learn from, if he's working with some of the best directors in the game like he wants to, he could learn some things and maybe want to go that route down the road. Especially as he gets older, you know. But I think right now he wants to really explore the acting, ma'am. He wants to really explore the acting vibe and just kind of see what he can get out of that. But you never know, down the road. We'll see. That would really grind fucking The Rock's gears. This motherfucker's gonna be a director now. Put me in your movie.
All right. That's
Set it
gonna
in the jungle.
wear gray shirt too.
This time make it blue.
Move.
Put a blue shirt.
This movie's directed by Dave Bautista, starring The Rock.
Oh my god. All the wrestler nerds out there would just kill themselves. They'd just be like losing their minds.
To be honest, on the wrestling fan side of things, a lot of them don't like it when they go to Hollywood.
Oh, they
it's
sell
like,
out, huh?
oh yeah, it's like, oh, you sold out. What about us? What about our feelings? And I'm just like, look, you get slammed into the mat about 300 nights a year
Yeah, really.
for like
Jesus.
10 years
Enough
and
already.
see how your body feels about it. I feel like if people are going from wrestler to Hollywood, it's just going to put more of a spotlight on wrestlers as performers in general.
Yeah.
So I think it just helps the business in full. Not Money Plane. I feel like that's going to be my penance for making you watch all these Bautista
I feel
movies.
like one day we've mentioned Money Plane so many times. I feel like we have to do it now, like preferably on your show, because that makes sense. I don't want to do it on our show.
Well, you don't want to crossover, make a special event?
Yeah, because on our show we like analyze the whole movie, and I have a feeling I'm gonna have a hard time deeply analyzing fucking Money Plane.
We should just do a three-peat movie of like, we'll do like Money Plane, Boone the Bounty Hunter, and Santa's Helpers, and we'll do all three of them together.
Yeah, let's do that. That's fun.
All right, I'll put that in. So you hear that, everyone? You have something to look forward to. We have something to look forward to. We're gonna have a trilogy of watching these movies next time these guys come on. And Frankie, next time you come on, I always give somebody a nickname, so I'll come up with a nickname for you.
Okay.
All right. I have to make sure you approved it. I mean, Scotty sequel, because we usually just go over sequel wrestling feuds. And
we talked about some sequels here, so we're fine. We're fine.
Yeah, yeah, we're good.
We're still Scotty sequels.
Yeah, we're still committed.
We're on brand.
Anyway, that's going to do it for this edition of Wrestling Retold and Relived with Richie Mars. I, of course, am your host, Richie Mars. Thank you so much for Shoot the Flicks, Scotty and Frankie, for joining us. Please tell the viewing and listening audience where we could listen to your show.
Okay. Thank you, Richie, for having us on. It's been a real pleasure. So our show is called Shoot the Flick. Scotty and I, as husband and wife, we show each other different movies that the other one hasn't seen. We span all different kinds of genres and stars and directors and wrestling superstars. But we come out with episodes usually most Wednesdays. It's on Spotify, iTunes, Google Podcast, anywhere pods are casted, all that good stuff. And we look forward to having you guys come and listen to us.
Indeed.
Awesome. Thank you so much for you guys for joining in. Again, you could follow me on the Instagram and Twitter and the TikTok at Retold Richie Mars. Thank you so much for joining us. TTFN, ta-ta for now. See you next time.